This is the new BMW M2, and it marks an important moment in history. It's the last ever M-car without electrification, and it's almost certainly the last ever M-car to offer a manual gearbox. So is it a fitting farewell? Stay tuned to find out, but before that, like the video, subscribe to the Car Sales channel, give us your thoughts on the M2 in the comments below. So typically I'd now run you through the specs and the equipment and the pricing, but let's face it, none of that's going to matter if the M2 isn't absolutely awesome to drive. So let's get straight into it, shall we? You can now get an M badge on hatchbacks and SUVs and even electric cars, but the M2 recipe is what made the brand famous. Now, on paper, the new M2 looks very similar to the old M2, but it's a much more serious car. Essentially, it's a cut-down M4, so it's got a much bigger footprint than before, it's got more grip, more power, more, well, everything really. Sadly, that includes more weight. This thing weighs a scarcely believable 1,725 kilograms, but the good news, at least, is that it doesn't really feel that fat. And even if it did, you'd probably forgive it because this thing is an immense amount of fun. So with more grip and more power, the limit is higher, so things do happen a bit faster, well, in the dry at least. But that limit is still hugely broad. You don't drive the M2 wondering or guessing what's going to happen. And if the grip does run out, it doesn't do so suddenly. As a result, you can throw this thing around. And I know that's not the way to go fast, but it is the way to put a massive smile on your face. All right, since we're here on track, there are two M2 features that I want to play with and show you. The first is M traction control. So if you turn stability control off, obviously in a safe controlled environment, then it gives you the option of 10 stages of traction control. So I'm going to go through these two corners with it set to various levels and we'll see what happens really. So first off, I've got a 10, which is max. So second gear, go through, heaps of power. Look at that, it's flat to the floor and it's not doing anything. It's pretty impressive. Now remember, this is traction control only, so stability control is still off. So if the car's sliding, it's not going to save you, but it does stop wheel spin. All right, coming up to the same corner now, so let's go 7. Turn in, give it lots of throttle. Oh, there we go. So there you go, the car will still slide because there's no stability control, but I can put my foot down and it won't keep sliding. So that kind of feels like MDM mode really, like the Sport ESP setting. All right, let's go again. Let's back it off to 2. So now it's kind of barely on. Lots of throttle. Oh, there we go. But, oh wow, you can kind of hold angle, hold drifts. What a weird feeling. So it goes sideways, and then even if you hold the accelerator on, so normally you'd spin out, it kind of just allows enough wheel slip to hold the car on angle without spinning out completely. So now let's go off completely. There we go, but now I've got to do it all myself. There we go. Back this car. Oh man, this car's good. Okay, so that brings me to the second feature I want to show you, which is the M Drift Analyzer. So essentially the car can score your sideways efforts. Here we go, just rock up and activate it here on the screen. So it shows your M traction level, drift duration, drift angle, and drift distance. So guys, how long, how far, and how sideways you are. And it gives you a score out of 5 stars. So let's have a go, see how I go. Okay, second gear. way. Can we get the transition? We can, that's good. And the other way. There we go. Whoa. Hey, 5 stars. I get a little trophy in my head-up display. That's pretty cool. Now, you might think all this sideways stuff is a bit silly, and, well, it is really, but I actually know a couple of guys with dedicated M2 drift cars of the old generation. So this is actually very relevant consumer advice. Anyway, happily, the new M2 passes its driving test with flying colours, so let's have a look at it in a bit more detail. I mentioned the new M2 is more everything, and that includes the price, which is now over $120,000 plus on-road costs. That's a big hike over its predecessor, but still around 45 grand less than the cheapest M4. BMW's standard 5-year warranty applies, and servicing will set you back around $700 per visit. Under the bonnet is the same 3-litre twin-turbo straight 6 as you'll find in the M4, but the M2 makes a little bit less power and torque. Manual and auto are the same price, so the latter is a little bit faster and a little bit more economical. Whereas the previous M2 was pretty no frills, especially in pure guise, the new car is loaded with adaptive LED headlights, a head-up display, triple-zone climate control, Harman Kardon stereo, heated seats and steering wheel, carbon roof, carbon fibre trim and more. Speaking of carbon, the only cost option is the $14,500 M Carbon Experience, which essentially gets you these seats. They're almost 11 kilograms lighter, but I would save your money, especially if you're going for the manual. The problem is there's this big carbon bulge between your legs. Stop giggling. And because the pedals are offset to the right, every time you use the clutch, the carbon bit digs into your left leg. It's very uncomfortable. Infotainment is handled by iDrive 8 with all its many features, though the wireless smartphone mirroring will no doubt be the most frequently used. The M2 is also bang up to date in its safety offering with all the active systems included as standard. Another advantage of the M2 growing in size is usable back seats. It's a little bit tight back here as an adult, especially in terms of headroom, but there should be plenty of space for older children or even a couple of kids' seats, as there's ISOFIX points on both sides. But I don't know if you want the kids kicking the back of your carbon seats. The boot is also a handy 390 litres, so the M2 is as close as you can really come to a practical sports car. So we've now covered pretty much everything. All that's left is to see how the M2 stacks up on the road. Probably the biggest shortcoming of the old M2, one of its only shortcomings really, loved that car, was the lack of adaptive suspension. Unless you bought the CS, that was 140 grand. Adaptive dampers are now standard on the new M2 and they do make it a bit more livable. This is still a very firm car and there's a lot of road noise too, but I think both are just on the okay side, given that this is a sports car after all. Now for the bit that will probably have the purists calling me all sorts of names in the comments. If I was buying an M2, I would have it as an automatic without a moment's hesitation. Kudos to BMW for still offering the choice, and those who choose the manual will probably be very happy, but the new M2 is a better car as an auto. The shift isn't particularly nice. It introduces turbo lag. Basically, it gets in the way more than it enhances the experience. That said, if you do nail an up change and feel the engine smash you in the back after the pause, it does feel pretty good. The engine is a monster. If I was being really picky, I'd like it to sound a bit more aggro, but there's massive power and torque, and once the turbos are spinning, fantastic response. Obviously on the road the M2 is super fast with stacks of grip, but the best thing about it is how alive it feels. Now that pretty much everything's all-wheel drive, it's almost a shock to have a car that isn't nailed to the road. But the way the M2 squirms and reacts to changes in road condition or surface is a big part of its appeal. You've probably figured out by now that the new M2 is a pretty awesome bit of kit. It might seem like a lot of money, but when you take into account the increased performance and the amount of equipment, the price really isn't too bad. Most importantly, it makes driving fun. And that makes it a fitting way to farewell the M Division's old school era. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the Car Sales channel, and give us a comment down below with any cars you'd like to see us review.